Gather around. We have a big story to tell, one that involves desperation and a little murder, a tale about revealing secrets, and one about manipulation and deception. We now take you to Chapter 1. Today's story is about expensive video games and the collapse of our sanity. The two of us were getting ready for the holiday season that was slowly approaching. The Christmas spirit was in the air. All that was left was making a wish list for what we wanted for Christmas. Not for Santa Claus, of course, since we haven't really been good this year. Our money's on Yoshi, right? Oh yeah. Up, down. Oh, the tragedy of backlog games. Turns out you can't do your taxes on the Wii U. Oh Release the Grim Reaper. This one sucks. They all suck. We'll wait until it really causes a problem. And we are addicted to taking screenshots on our Nintendo Switch. So, instead of relying on Santa for gifts, we thought it'd be better if we do it ourselves and buy a cool video game. The two of us went back and forth, discussing what would be the perfect game to buy. How about we get the Bayonetta trilogy for the Switch? Matt said. We have enough Switch games. What about something like Pikmin 2 for the Wii? Mike replied. Too expensive, Matt exclaimed. But hold on, that gave him an idea. When he was setting up the Christmas lights around our video game shelves, something seemed missing. That super rare game that stands out. A game that doesn't belong with the others in our collection, but on its own. What we were missing was an expensive game to display, so that we can once and for all look cool whenever company comes over. Which barely happens because we have, no friends. We both hurried over to Walberto the Wallet to check how much money we had. Walberto was not okay with this idea, of course, but we didn't care. After a brief argument with Walberto, it was now time to begin our search for the perfect expensive game to display. We'll be taking a look at the cost of games from price charting sites to help us select the perfect game. Well, what are we looking for? Something playable, that's for sure. Anything sealed and graded is off limits. Collector's editions that come with a bunch of junk are out too, because we don't have enough room to display all those useless goodies. So we can count out a majority of Xbox and PlayStation games, since most of the pricier games are collector's editions. The PS1 and PS2 have some interesting options, but Nintendo comes first. So the game that we're looking for needs to be expensive, unique, and playable. Now we could just end all operations right now and display our copy of Shantae for the Game Boy Color, but come on silly, this is the re-release version that Limited Run distributed. Albeit if it was the real deal, then absolutely it deserves to be neatly displayed. Going for roughly $1,000, and one of the last games to release on the system back in 2002. Let us take you back to the summer of 2017. Matt was in the mood to play some Game Boy games. I researched a list of the best games that the system had to offer and stumbled upon Shantae. Damn, it looked amazing. I had this sudden urge to buy it right then and there. It cost $1,000, so I resorted to purchasing it on the 3DS eShop faster than 99-pound 4th grade me running to the garage door when our mom came home with some McDoubles. You can also get it on the Switch, along with the other games in the franchise, for way cheaper. And wait, what the hell? Shantae and the Pirate's Curse goes for like $400? Yeah, it's one of the most expensive Switch games, and perhaps the most expensive game within our entire collection. But we can't display it because Matt spent $40 on it. This spot is reserved for a major investment, not a game that we already own that unexpectedly raised in value over the years. Talking about games like Amazing Theater and Spud's Adventure. What? Two games developed by Atlas for Game Boy back in 1991 in Japan. You play as a potato. Atlas didn't distribute many copies over to the US, and they didn't sell all that well here in the States, especially Amazing Tater. So they're relatively rare to come by these days. I mean, they're both the most valuable games for the Game Boy. That's gonna be a good feeling. If you're a Game Boy game, that is. So much a good feeling for the old wallet. What about King James's Bible? Matt foolishly suggested. You see, he thought it was about LeBron James's tips and tricks on how to play basketball. But you see, it's a Bible. It was a joke. I then suggested we should consider buying something like Knight's Quest. Now that's more our style. A simple RPG with aesthetically pleasing graphics for a Game Boy game. Knight's Quest. Yeah, now you got me thinking of Dragon Quest. Man, what a pain in the ass this series is in terms of collecting. Listen, I just want to play all the Dragon Warrior and Quest games in order. But how? How? We own the first two, no problem. 3 copies of Dragon Warrior 2, by the way, and we will not be taking any questions regarding as to why. Dragon Warrior 3 costs a hefty amount, so the Switch port collection was what I resorted to playing. But someone please help me out. Every other Dragon Warrior and Quest game, doesn't matter what systems, NES, DS, 3DS, PlayStation, anything, are expensive. They're intangible. I don't know what to do anymore. I just need help. And don't you dare suggest iOS or emulating. Sure, emulating games may be a safer solution and will help old Roberto out, but no. We're collectors, not felons. Ever since we got into this hobby of collecting games back in 2012, we were fascinated by the idea of accumulating as many games as possible, from all-time classics, games from our favorite franchises, childhood games, the bad ones, and of course, the rare games. That was our dream. It's addicting, but man is it fun. With that being said, preservation of classic games via eShop or re-releases is a healthy alternative instead of going into debt. See, we have this annoying trait where we'd prefer to experience the all-time classics from the real deal. You know, the original disc or cartridge. It's like buying White Castle burgers from the frozen food section at Walmart rather than actually going to White Castle. But hey, sometimes you gotta stay on a budget and learn to control your spending habits. Like, do we really need the original Earthbound cartridge for Super Nintendo? I mean, we could simply walk over to the freezer section and play it on the SNES Mini, 3DS eShop, or Switch Online. No, we have dreams to chase, remember? Yeah, Mike sort of just bought this game on a whim. What can I say? It was a couple days after Christmas of 2018, and I felt like treating myself to a must-have Super Nintendo game. I made my way over to the Land of Danger, where I stumbled upon a copy for $180. eBay can be a risky place to buy old games, because there's who get away with selling bootleg games. But the seller I found owned a video game store, so it had to be legit. Now, $180 is a lot for a game, but boy, did I strike while the iron was hot, because the value of Earthbound increased shortly afterwards, and is continuing to do so. If I didn't listen to the persuasive voices in my head that night, this site would have given us the go-ahead to play Earthbound in the freezer section. Oh wow, we finally own Earthbound! Alright, let's finally play some Earthbound! However, distressed thoughts abruptly consumed our minds as we held our $200 cartridge with doubt. This is probably fake. Yeah, everything was all good. Bootleg copies of Earthbound are notorious for being all over the internet, so it's best to be wary when hunting one down. As a matter of fact, be cautious about any game you buy off the internet. Those filthy, shady dickwads are everywhere. Do your research, study the provided photos, just be careful. But no problem on our end, we played stress-free that night, except the next day when we played our file was deleted. Our copy was legit. Apparently this can happen if you move the cartridge around or something. So we had to carefully play the entire game on needles without touching the Super Nintendo. Fire Emblem Path of Radiance for the Nintendo GameCube and Radiant Dawn for the Wii are two other games we bought at the right time. Seriously, we're a couple of lucky bastards. The prices for both of these games have since doubled in value. However, I am going to be taking a shot at you for not buying Devil's Third years ago. Damn it, I was really hoping you want to bring that up. Buying Devil's Third these days is like actually dealing with the devil. It will financially ruin and haunt you. In fact, I'm haunted by the fact I almost bought this game several times from 2016 to 2019. Jesus, it was so cheap back then. Why didn't I pull the trigger? The more and more we look at video game prices, our dream of owning a large quantity of physical games seems less and less realistic. You know, there will be times where you gotta stand strong and pass up on expensive video games. It's like, do we really want to spend hundreds and hundreds of dollars on Super Bowling for the Nintendo 64? No. If anything, we should focus on saving our money so that, we could move out of our parents' house. Well, what better way to jumpstart this plan than to sell some of our games? We got Game & Wario for like $30. This goes for about $100 to $130 these days. But come on. Do you hear the words that I'm saying? Sell our games? Psh, we can't do that. When we look at these shelves, all we see is memories and the good times we had, and maybe a little bit of irresponsible choices. But most importantly, what we don't see is a lot of Club Penguin games. I mean, come on, we need more Club Penguin games. Wait, what the f***? Club Penguin Game Day for the Wii is $500. No! Club Penguin is one of our favorite franchises, Matt shouted as he ran towards the corner to cry like a little baby boy. Whoa, no, I did not do that. I was just imagining how tragic our lives will be for never getting a chance to play Sumo Smash. Depression consumed us on the spot. Mike held her keyboard high in the air, about to angrily smash it to bits like a little rage boy. Hey, I did not do that, okay? You're being a little overdramatic here. I kind of did. All right, and besides, it was all a big misunderstanding. See, The limited edition is worth 5 hundos, while the standard goes for like $6. So I went ahead and snatched a copy before it blasts to $3,000 in the future. Aside from the collectors and limited editions, the hardcore Club Penguin fans are living lavishly. All 3 games cost $20. However, hardcore Pokemon fans who are looking to own physical copies of every Pokemon game, mainline, and spin-offs are most likely to be in major debt. Now, we love Pokemon and hope to one day continue to disappoint society even more by owning every Pokemon game. Well, good news, society. That will take a long time to fulfill because god damn, some of these titles got smacked upside the head by the ugly price stick. Pokemon Box for the GameCube is one of the most high-priced Pokemon games. Yeah, a game all about sorting through Pokemon boxes. Yeah, this is worth $4,000. Spend your entire paycheck to sort through some Pokemon boxes. After buying this, you'll most likely be living in a box. Yeah, thankfully for us, we don't seem to own a big enough box to house the both of us. So, until next time, Pokemon Box. We both love Zelda just as much as we do Pokemon. So, naturally, we gotta, own all the Legend of Zelda games too. Collecting for this franchise is getting more and more costly. The GBA cart alone for Minish Cap goes for around $80. That's because there's a high demand for classic Nintendo games. Nintendo has a knack for making their games feel timeless. Nostalgia also plays a huge role in this, and although the Zelda CDI games serve absolutely zero nostalgia factors to us, they would surely serve as a conversation starter for any parties we throw. No one shows up to our parties. The 3 CDI Zelda games are notorious for being the biggest pieces of Legend of Zelda games to ever exist. One of them costs over $1,000. If we decide on getting Zelda's Adventure, we'd have to purchase the other 2 as well because, let's be real, owning only one piece of the CDI Triforce is lame as hell. Oh, lovely. Look at that price tag. Just keep skyrocketing. Oh, and while we're at it, we gotta throw in a CDI in there too because we don't even own one. We could use that money for good, like buying ourselves a brand new PlayStation 5, an extra controller, and 23 $70 games. Going the Philips CDI route is like going on a cruise ship around the world in a shrimp boat. That being said, consoles that we don't own are off the table. That means any Atari, Sega, and even consoles like the Neo Geo are off limits too. But we can't not talk about some of these systems, because dang, these are home to some of the rarest and big ticket games. Air Raid for the Atari 2600 is not easy to come by, given that about a dozen copies exist due to its limited distribution in 1982. It's a valuable collector's piece, just like Red Crossing. Only 2 copies exist. Perfect, 1 copy for the both of us. The Atari may not have the most exciting games and for sure as hell have aged well over the years, but it's a treasure trove for hardcore collectors. Same goes for the Neo Geo. Woo-wee! The price tags on the Neo Geo AES and CD games make us sweat. You think losing sleep from overthinking your job interview that's in a few hours is anxiety inducing? That's nothing compared to navigating Neo Geo games on eBay. Or the manual for Metal Slug, because that shit's like $15,000. Collecting for these retro consoles sounds fun in our minds, but we're just not ready for that big of a commitment right now. So, what about the retro consoles that exist in our game room? The NES. A console loaded with expensive 8-bit cartridges, like Little Peekaboo Poker, and Hot Shots, and Bubble Bath Babes. Let's just jump ahead to Super Nintendo games where we can find games more to our liking. Yeah, there's some oddballs here, like Xtract Mountain Bike Rally Speed Racer. You know, that one game where you play using a fucking exercise bike. Or we can stick with games high up on our video game wish lists like Harvest Moon, Chrono Trigger, and Demon's Crest. Speaking of exercise games, there's one on the NES called Stadium Events, an exercise game where you play using the power pad. Stadium Events was rebranded to World Class Track Meet by Nintendo after it was on store shelves. So they had to be taken down and were replaced by World Class Track Meet, which played exactly the same. Nintendo just wanted the rights to it because they saw potential in family fun and fitness games. Original copies of Family Fun Stadium Events is perhaps the holy grail of NES collectibles, especially if it's still in the box. While we're on the subject of games all about intense competition, we may as well check out the competition and tournament cartridges from Nintendo sponsored events. First up, we got the famous, well-known Nintendo World Championship NES carts. There are 2 variations of this game, gray and gold. The gray copies were given to the 90 competition finalists, while the gold versions were given to 26 winners from a Nintendo Power contest. Both of these carts are considered some of gaming's rarest collector's pieces. Does it look like we're worthy to own one of these? No, it will never happen, just like owning the one and only copy of Nintendo Campus Challenge 1991. Besides, it looks like this. Ew. Nintendo hosted another Campus Challenge event a year later, but this time for their new console. This game is a little more easier to attain than Campus Challenge for NES because there are 2 known copies to exist. And finally, there's Nintendo Power Fest of 1994, the rarest and most expensive Super Nintendo cartridge. 33 were made but only 2 have been seen. PowerFest 94 was a high score competition held in multiple cities and towns throughout the US. The finals then took place in San Diego, California, where the finalists were split into 4 teams: the Cyclones, Hurricanes, Tornadoes, and the Typhoons. Yeah, Nintendo should just name their teams after their own iconic characters, but we digress. The 2 finalists had to duke it out in a modified Donkey Kong Country cartridge. Which brings us to our next game. Blockbuster held a gaming event called the Blockbuster World Video Game Championships 2. This same watered-down version of Donkey Kong Country from the PowerFest 94 finals was used in this competition. The copies were then sold through Nintendo Power and are considered a valuable piece to own. Star Fox Super Weekend Competition is another sought-after tournament-style game. Similar to Donkey Kong, the competition was held in malls across the US where players competed to get the highest score. After the event, the games were also briefly sold through Nintendo Power. The cover of this game, though, is a bit more interesting compared to Donkey Kong Country. Donkey Kong's almost looks the exact same as its retail version. The only distinct difference are the words competition cartridge, peeking out from the top right. Star Fox's cartridge is entirely dissimilar when next to the official game. It features its own unique logo depicting a planet. The words Super Weekend wrap around it, and the contrast in colors makes this label pop. In other words, stand out in your collection. If you look close enough, something else on this cartridge stands out too. In the upper right it says, "Not For Resale." These words can be smacked on various games from a multitude of gaming systems, typically labeled with red text in a white box depicting a warning message, which is what it was. Publishers slapped this label on certain games, such as ones included in bundles to caution retailers to not sell them separately, so that the number of bundled sales can be properly tracked. Not For Resale, or NFR, can also be found printed on promotional games. The most intriguing NFR games are the ones that were displayed in kiosks to help promote the game. What makes some NFR games more valuable is the fact that some aren't the final versions of the game, meaning they contain demo levels, beta content, or unique menus. These games were never intended to be released to the public, and were supposed to be tossed out by the store managers or shipped back to the publishers once the promotion was done. Well, apparently all of these corporations didn't perform thorough background checks and hired a bunch of 8th Commandment breakers because a large portion of NFR games made their way around the streets. Kudos to those ladies and gentlemen, because Not For Resale games are truly one-of-a-kind pieces of gaming history. Skimming through price charting sites, you'll notice a pattern of NFR games at the top or near it in just about every Nintendo console and handhelds. The N64 is our favorite console next to the Switch, so naturally, we gravitated towards taking a gander at some N64 NFRs. Woo-wee! So many exciting NFR games here that will make any nerd feel butterflies. There's 2 NFR variations of Pokemon Snap. One of them is the full game, while the other features the first 2 levels, and were part of the famous kiosk with the printable photos. Oh yeah, that would look good right there. Turok 2 is another one that is a full demo and has a unique label that screams, "I'm super important and need attention." But we've never played any Turok games, so we don't really give a shit about them. Though we do give a lot of shits about Mario Party. This one doesn't have the words "Not For Resale" printed on the label. Instead, it has a sticker slapped on the back. Looking pretty bland. It's actually just Toy Story 2. Another game we care a lot about is Donkey Kong 64. A sentence not everyone can get behind, we know, but come on, you gotta get behind that great Not For Resale cart. Just, I don't know, close your eyes, it might help. Just like Pokemon Snap, Donkey Kong 64 has 2 NFR versions, but in separate colors. Like Mario Party, the yellow one has a sticker on the back. Not that exciting. The gray one, on the other hand, is what has our hands swiftly rubbing together. Ocarina of Time would no doubt look sexy as hell on top of our shelf. No, not the gray NFR, but the gold one. Holy shit, is it hot in here? Majora's Mask comes in gray and gold. The gray variant is the motherlode of N64 collectibles. It features a level select menu and all the items and weapons are available right from the get-go. Yes, this might be just the perfect game we're looking for. Only gray version of Majora's Mask, the most prized and expensive N64 game. It's for one of our favorite consoles. It's all making sense. However, Yoshi's story piqued our interest. The 2 of us have terrifying nightmares associated with our normal copy of Yoshi's story. Normal isn't the correct word to describe our copy. Haunted is more appropriate. Now, you might be asking yourself, how in the fuck is your Yoshi story haunted? Well, looks like you're gonna have to keep asking yourself that question like a fool, because the 2 of us made a pact to never tell the story about what happened. Now, if we bought a rarer version of Yoshi's story with an interesting backstory, that might help us forget about the trauma we endured with our copy. Interesting backstory? Yeah, just look at that label. It radiates that sweet, sweet 90s N64 aesthetic, unlike the retail version, which is just a pink Yoshi licking a pair of blue jeans. Yeah, it's just a cropped picture of the box art, but it's the only NFR N64 game that is entirely different when compared to the official full version. The words International Version is written across the top, and upon further inspection, you may notice a tan color around the edges. Who cares? Excuse me? That tan color you see is actually the Japanese label underneath. That's right, the international version is in fact the Japanese version of the game. The game was modified to work in NTSC N64s, but plays entirely in Japanese. This copy is so incredibly expensive and hard to come by, which explains these outrageous eBay offers. $25,000 to $10,000? These prices were too insane and way out of our budget. However, as we were about to give up, a mysterious ad popped up, redirecting us to a different site where a cheaper option was available. Almost as if it was fate. It was perfect. It's the only way to make us forget about Yoshi's story, right? The two of us pondered for a moment, asking ourselves if this was the right decision, listing the pros and cons. And for like 26 seconds tops. Buy it now, baby! Ah, shit. The two of us simultaneously said, "Yeah, we got bamboozled. Yeah, I probably should have paid attention to the seller's username and gone through the pictures." We stood there like a couple of broke idiots, wondering what we should do to make our money back. Maybe we should sell some of our games, Mike glumly suggested. Matt then started to pitch the idea about taking out a loan in order to buy King James's Bible so that we could become NBA superstars and make a fortune. But then it hit us. We can never grow the balls necessary to sell the games we care about. But there is something we can get rid of. Maybe it's time.